Hey, you dorks, this is Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you are listening to The Dorkening.
Hi, I'm Brian Johnson, and although you probably accidentally stumbled across it and have no idea why you're watching it, you are in fact watching The Dorkening.
Hello, this is Tom Kenny, voice actor, the voice of the Ice King on Adventure Time, and SpongeBob SquarePants. Meow. Oh, Gary the Snail, too. Hey, guess what you're filling your eye holes and ear holes with? The Dorkening! Oh, I love the Dorkening. Very popular in Ooh and Bikini Bottom.
Hi, I'm Lou Ferrigno. You're watching The Dorkening. And you know what? You don't like me when I get angry, so don't get me angry. You better keep watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, this is Felissa Rose, and you're watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, it's Courtney Palm. We're shooting Death House, and you're watching The Dorkening.
This is Anthony Michael Hall, and you're watching The Dorkening. Stay tuned. My friends are going to show you what entertainment's all about, baby.
The Dorkening.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Happy Monday, all. We got an awesome show scheduled for today on the Creator Spotlight, powered by the Dorkening Podcast Network. And as always, Patsy, how's it going, my friend?
Going all right. You know, things are going well. I got my nerdy Space Invader shirt on today.
Nice.
I have to, I know we had a little bit of discussion off the air. And I wanted to make sure that, you know, it's not just I'm a sports nerd. I had to make sure that I showed off all my other nerdy stuff. And I do want to show the folks at home that on top of my Pac-Man game, I do have a lightsaber. So there's a lot of different nerddoms here. I want to just want to make sure we're clear on that. That's all.
So you're not just a sports nerd, you're a nerd.
Right. You know, I got my, if you look right here, I got my Calvin and Hobbes, you know, collection. You know, I got my Jaws stuff. So yeah. It's just the football stuff is a little more prominent, but you know, maybe things need to get rearranged a little bit more. Maybe that's what has to happen.
You know, and we are on the Dorkening, so we should say dork instead of nerd, because, you know,
dork, nerd, geek, I look at those as all interchangeable.
Exactly. Yeah, speaking of interchangeable, Phil, how's it going?
Good. Speaking of all those terms, nerd, I've used to hate all those terms, and I'm still not fond of them. But nerd is okay because it was invented by Dr. Seuss. But the other terms, I don't appreciate.
Well, I hear you.
I am not a dork, and I'm not a geek. I refuse.
I understand, because people of our age, you know, we grew up, you know, that was an offensive word to us, and now, you know, geek is chic. So it's yeah.
What we used to say in school, we were a never-ending radical dude. That's what they used to like. Oh, you're a nerd. Oh, a never-ending radical dude. Yeah, I am. That's how we used to combat that.
Well, you know, speaking of never-ending radical dudes, would you like to introduce our awesome guests?
Oh yes, this week we have Jim the Podcast Sherpa, who he believes that there are far too many blessed for the face for podcasting. Very nice. I would imagine that you sell those because you need to recoup some of your money from your lawsuit from Snoopy. So, so in our show description, it says that we have to ask you why there are too many podcasts. So, enlighten us. Why are there too many podcasts?
There are always too many podcasts because there are never enough podcasts. That's part of the problem. There can't be never enough.
I think that makes sense.
I usually don't. That's okay.
No, that's fine. Like I'm totally with it. You heard my story off air, so you know where my head is at today. So,
I mean,
well, let me follow up on that, Jim. Since there is never too many, what is your little section of the podcast world so the listeners know a little more about you?
Sure. Mine is, I call it like a gateway podcast. Like if people just started listening to podcasts and they say, oh, everybody's doing one, so let me start listening. My show invites a lot of people who host podcasts and they get to talk about their shows. And we also offer recommendations for different types of shows as well. And in the meantime, it's not all podcasters all the time. We do have people from the entertainment folks, from the entertainment field, or people with interesting occupations or interesting social media presence. Just a good mix for people to come on and check out.
So it's kind of a mix and match type of podcast, like all different things, right?
Right, absolutely.
Potpourri, I guess, is what it's called, right? Is that the term it's used?
Yeah, you're not labeling yourself and being held down by any specific genre or platform. Right. Yeah. Like on my sports show, we're not going to be like, oh, so today I watched Mortal Kombat and here's what I thought about it. Maybe that's a bad example because that's kind of like MMA, but I don't know.
I think we understood though. That's a good analogy. It's okay.
Yeah, but it's nice to not be bound by any specific, like, this is what we talk about on this show. It's like, yeah, like, with this, like, we interview different creators, but we don't have any specific, like, you could create anything. Like, you could be a musician or a restaurateur or, a podcaster, or you make movies. It doesn't matter what you create, as long as you're creating something.
Right. I'm creating confusion constantly.
Right. And that counts.
That's right.
That counts. That absolutely counts.
And well, I mean, if you think of it, you do have a niche for interviewing.
Yes.
So it's not one particular person, but it's always an interview type of podcast.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that works for the good podcast is when you have people who have stories, and that's what I've been happy to do for like the last 2 years. I've done about 170 episodes, and it's all folks with stories, and it's all sorts. I've met all sorts of people. I've spoken with a millionaire chocolatier in Australia. I've talked to a supermodel. I've spoken with a competitive pole dancer, mediums. I've spoken to a midwife. And it's good, like, when you get to learn things about people, too. They're not things that you hear in everyday conversation. So at least when you're doing this and you're talking to people all over the world, it adds a little spice to your life.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a good variety, like where you're, again, that way it doesn't, for you, it doesn't get stale. And I think that's one of the things that really hurts podcasts. And it's like, I have to review another movie, and I've watched like 8 movies in a row and I've hated every single goddamn one of them. But with these, the various people that you're interviewing, like, everybody's coming from a different place and from a different, background, in some cases, different countries. So you've got this variety. So it's not stale for you. It's not stale for the audience, so you're still having a good time, and that comes through, and that gives you a better product.
Yeah. And I want my guests to have a good time too. My show has never been too heavy. We don't talk politics or anything like that. There's really not even much debating going on. It's usually kind of, let's get to know this person. Let's see what their story is, and, and take it from there. And, very, very often you get people who they come on and you can tell that they want to have a good time. And that shows too. And that makes it even more fun to talk to them and for the listeners to experience that as well.
Now, Jim, where do you live? What state are you, or province or whatever?
I'm in the middle of Long Island.
Okay, so
very middle. Just that's a single point. I'm standing.
And it's funny, we were talking about Long Island.
We were just talking about Long Island. I know. But speaking of Long Island, and you living there, how is it? This podcasting where you've been able to interview people literally on the opposite side of where Long Island even is, such as Australia and stuff. How did you get into doing that? This type of podcast where you're interviewing eclectic group of people from all over the place.
Yeah. Originally, when I started, I just became a fan of podcasts. And then I said, I could probably do something like this. And I realized, I did have a little bit of a tiny bit of a radio background when I was in college, not professionally, because I think, they would just say, no, get out. But once I started doing it, I originally wanted to do a music podcast. And that's kind of tricky because all the licensing and stuff like that. And I was trying to get artists on, and I was getting a lot of, no, we don't want to do your show. So I said, well, I like podcasts. Let's talk about podcasts. And there's people all over, like online with social media presences, presence. And usually, you message them and say, hey, I got this show. You want to come on? There are like websites where people actually kind of put themselves out there and say, I'd like to be a guest on your podcast. I've gotten some of those too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough, especially with the music thing, because you never know what you can play and what you can't. Like, I just got a copyright strike on a video from months ago. They're like, oh yeah, you have a minute and 7 seconds of music, so we're just going to mute that, or we can delete your video completely.
Well, so that was a video, and one of the shows on the network actually got a request to take their episode down, the podcast. So this actually came from our podcast distributor, because they are playing music in the podcast, but they don't actively search for that. But apparently the podcast that put it up, put the name and information of the song, in their show title and description.
I know there was a short-lived, well, it may not be short-lived, but I haven't heard about it for about a year or two. But even Facebook, if you posted up a video, or YouTube, you posted up a video, and even if you had music playing in the background, and they detected it, they would shut you down, So it's very bizarre, the stuff. So Jim, you've been able to get around that by interviewing other things besides your original idea, which was music. You've been interviewing all sorts of different people instead. How long have you been around for?
2 years. It's been actually 2 years this past April. I have actually spoken to musicians, and I featured their music, but I got their permission to play the music, to feature it on the show. But I would never my voiceover guy and I did a show on Spotify where you can actually play the music in the podcast and not get in trouble. And, that's just random songs from the 80s and everything, because we did all 80s themed shows. But when I spoke to a lady named Aubrey Logan, and she's a jazz artist, and her management, I said, can I feature some of her songs? And they were like, go ahead. So we did, and I made it a musical. I also spoke to Scotty Morris of Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. So we had a lot of swing music. He was a lot of fun. He was a really nice guy.
Nice.
Big Bad. I saw.
Yeah, they were in the movie Swingers.
Yes, they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw him live. It had to be in the 90s.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You guys will appreciate
that. I think they're out of Boston. I think they were out of Boston, but I can't remember.
They're out of California.
Are they really? Okay. Yeah. I'm confusing with the ones that Irish band in Boston that played all that Irish.
Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah, that's the band. I'm confusing him, but I do know who he's talking about because I saw the movie Swingers.
Mm-hmm. Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, Squirrel Nut Zippers, all of them rock.
Mm-hmm. Scotty was telling me, I know you guys will appreciate this story, that every Christmas he has his son-in-law over and he makes him watch the Star Wars Christmas special.
Nice.
We found out something fun about that last week. We had Bruce Valanche on, and it turns out that he wrote.
Was one of the
He was
co-writers.
part of the writing team for that movie.
Yeah, so we had a good 15 minutes discussion on that, actually.
Yeah.
Kinda funny.
It's like, that's amazing. He's like, well, I'm like, was there a specific part that you did? He's like, well, I got B. Arthur in there. I'm like, all right, solid.
His explanation for that is we were doing a lot of drugs back then, Jim.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said.
yeah, there was a lot of that.
Just real quick in the chat room, Favor Emmanuel, hello, anyone home? Yeah, we're here. Robert Lazier says, what up, guys? Azazul says, what's picking? And that also brings us to, with Bruce Valanche, you're part of the SJ network. How did you get introduced with Steve?
Just online. He posted a thing up, and I was like, do I need this? And I figured, well, let's just see what happens. And I contacted him, and he sent me all sorts of people. I interviewed his 6th grade teacher once.
Oh, wow.
But he also sent me like Robert Wall, and he sent me Bruce, a few other folks too. A couple of people who have up and coming movies in Netflix. There's a lady named Liz Priestley, and she's in that Concrete Cowboys movie that just came out.
Very cool.
And another lady named Shannon. I'm trying to figure. Oh, why am I forgetting her last name? Because she's fantastic, and she's in the one with Ewan McGregor coming out, Halston, on Netflix as well. So it's kind of cool to talk to up and coming people that like, wait a minute, I know this person.
It's very cool.
Yeah. Out of all the guests that you've interviewed, who's been, I know it's hard to say, but who's been one of your favorites so far?
Probably the one that I have in the highest regard is a guy named Pat Jankowitz. Did you guys ever meet him?
Not yet.
Now, Pat is an actor and he's a writer. He's written books about Jaws, the Hulk, and Buck Rogers. And he's done a lot of commercials and music videos and stuff like that. The guy is 6'9", and he actually played Bigfoot in an independent movie. And he's played like various creatures and stuff where he's killed people. And he's also been a co-host of a podcast that was on. So he knows how to bring the power, when you're doing an interview with him. I mean, my first question with him was, Pat, you're my only guest who's gotten ice cream from Joey Buttafuoco, and you've worked with a kangaroo, which he's done both. So, I mean, there are a lot of actors who can really have that kind of breadth to their careers.
I was gonna say, like, that's a definitely something that stands out on a resume. So what do you have, like, is there any standard question that you ask every guest, something that you're really interested in? Because we have folks on, especially folks who do conventions, and I have a very specific question that I ask everybody every time. Is there any, like, do you have like a go-to question that you always ask everybody? Or
I have certain go-to questions for certain guests. I think that's probably the best way to explain it. Lots of times I'll ask actors, what would be your dream role in a movie? Or if the actor has died in the movie, I always have to ask them, how did they die? I don't know why. It's just this weird obsession.
Good luck if you ever have Sean Bean on.
And usually with like the podcasters, I usually ask them, what podcast do you want to recommend to people? Like, what do you listen to? That's like the best way to listen, to catch on sometimes, to just kind of word of mouth. Because there are too many podcasts out there. You're not going to know every last one that's out there, either the small ones or even the big ones.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, so what's a podcast you would recommend?
Podcast that I recommend. I've been listening a lot to some of the ones that feature people that I've actually interviewed. There's a couple in Oregon, and they do a show called Odd Tonic. It's a paranormal show. They actually have a YouTube show as well, and it's probably one of the best made podcasts I've ever heard. They both have a film background, so they know how to make things sound good, and just, with the music and just the whole atmosphere. Really fascinating people. Who else? There's another couple that actually is on the East Coast, and they have a show called Just Nah Science, and they debunk the scientific things that get posted on Twitter. And and they're both scientists. They have a scientific background, so it's like real truth. It's not people that are buying into the latest rumor that's out there.
So that must be like never-ending content if they're debunking.
Yeah, they'll never be short for stuff for a show.
Hold it. You're telling me social media doesn't tell the truth? I'm completely shocked. I thought it was all true. I know. My gosh. Now, Jim, what about I guess your most famous interview? I mean, you said Pat Shankovitz was one of your favorite, but what's your most famous?
My most famous. I mean, I don't have like A-list celebrities. A lot of the folks that I interview have been, they've had their time in the sun, I guess, like Bruce Valanche, Scotty Morris, and then, like I said, and then there are the up and comers also. So, I mean, if one of those people ends up becoming really famous, I could be like, I talked to them. Now they can ignore me on social media too. Woohoo!
Well, see, I think that's always a difficult question to ask, because there are people that, again, based on which fandom you're a part of, which, what your specific proclivity might be.
Right.
Like, I know people that are like, oh, I have no idea who Bruce Valanche is, but it's like, oh, we had, Dee Wallace on, like, oh my God, you had Dee Wallace? Like, oh my God, she was so good in E.T. and Cujo. Like, like and you're always going to know somebody. Like when we had her on, we didn't even talk about E.T. and Cujo, really. We talked about her TED Talk. Like because she's always talked about E.T. and Cujo. Like that's one of those things that, I think is good in an interview, where it's like, if you have somebody on and you do your research, and I'm sure you do your research, because otherwise the show is not going to last and your guest isn't going to stay on there. If you like, okay, this is what I talk about, this is what I'm known for. Like again, just using Dee Wallace as an example, it's like, okay, everybody knows her from E.T., everybody knows her from Cujo.
Howling.
And how many times have you been asked questions about E.T. and Cujo? Like, let's talk about something else. Or like Linda Blair, you have Linda Blair on. It's like, let's talk about the extra. It's like, no, let's talk about the other stuff you do. Like the rescue dogs that you work with, or, let's talk about this charity that you're a part of, or let's talk, that I think you create more engaging interviews. Because obviously, if anybody has something to promote, obviously, time to promote their stuff. Like, a lot of folks are coming on. That's what they're hitting. Like, oh, I happen to have written a new book, or I've got a new album out. If you're, I think there's a good balance to be had with that, and I think that's something that you're able to do with just, knowing who your guest is, knowing what they're famous for, touching on that, making sure, you to familiarize your audience, because not everybody knows who everybody is, and then, what else is going on? What else do you have, in your quiver that people might not know about? Like, oh yeah, I know you from this movie, but, oh, I didn't know that you're also, a professional archer, like this random stuff.
Well, so, perfect example, Bruce Valanche, we found out he likes, the
Titanic.
Sunken ships.
Yeah. Loved big Titanic guy. So my question to you, Jim, is, in doing research and having conversations with people, what's something that, you talk to somebody about and you're like, oh my God, I had no clue that this was something that you liked to do, and I never would have guessed it. It's like, oh, well, I'm really into wood burning. And it's like, really, Danny Trejo, I had no clue that that's something that you like to do. I collect seashells. Or who is it? DMX used to raise orchids. Like, that's something that he did that nobody really touched on. but he was just like, I like orchids. I think it was DMX. I might be confusing him with someone else, but it was I believe it was a rapper, and he's just like, yeah, I love orchids. So what's something that you found out from somebody about that?
I mean, I've interviewed like a lot of former child actors too, so they don't just stick to like what they did when they were kids. Like I spoke to Jill Whelan, who was on the Love Boat, and she was in an infomercial on the for the Ronco rotisserie, the Set It and Forget It, and she loves her Set It and Forget It. She's like, I'm going to make dinner tonight on that rotisserie.
That's pretty cool that you interviewed her. That's awesome.
And that's a fun thing. It's like, yeah, like I was in this infomercial, and like this is my favorite appliance now. Like I absolutely love it. You know, it'd be like if talking to Vin Diesel about what video game thing he was in, like the Game Boy or like Sega Genesis or something. Like he was in some commercials. Like one of the first things he did. It's like, yeah, I still play my. What?
No, are you thinking of Jack Black with the Pitfall? Jack Black was in the Pitfall commercial.
Vin Diesel was in.
Vin Diesel is like a big dork. He listens to he plays D&D and all this other stuff. So
Joe Manganiello, the same thing. Like he's a big D&D guy. Like again, not something you'd think of. It's like, oh yeah. So when I wasn't, working out, so I'd look sexy in Magic Mike, I was I'm a level 12 druid.
Oh that's the guy that was in True Blood, right? Joe.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He's married to what's her face, the pretty good looking woman.
I don't know.
Yeah. The one from Modern Family, the really good looking one.
Sofia Vergara.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, Jim, speaking of who've interviewed, and I'm sure Patsy will appreciate this question too, the most famous sports figure.
Most famous sports figure. Oh, wow. I don't do too many sports interviews. I did a guy named Coach Scott Fields, who was actually a coach for the Golden State Warriors and the Utah Jazz for a little bit. He actually helped groom Stephon Marbury.
Way back in the day.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. How about that? That's cool.
But not too many like recent athletes, though. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of pro wrestlers,
which is always cool.
Now, Jim, let's go through an episode. How do you do it? Do you have like do you wing it, or do you have like segments in your episode that you break it into? How do you do it? Give us a rundown.
Actually, both of them, Phil.
Okay.
I'll do the interview first. And then, like I said, we'll talk about whatever. And usually the interview ends on what podcast would you recommend? And they can promote whatever they want to promote at the end of the interview. But beforehand is usually an introduction for the guest. After the interview, if it's a Too Many Podcasts show, it's Sherpa Suggestions. And that's where we'll usually have like a theme. If you want a top sports podcast, top, iHeartRadio podcast, it could be anything. Even if it just has a word in it, I'll do those, and then just like a little bit of a wrap up, and say to make sure you do my own plugging. Say make sure you follow me here and go to this website and buy my merchandise. That's pretty much the basic format of it.
How long's your episodes? Is it all random, dynamic, or do you have like a hard stop?
The shortest one I've ever done was about 20. The longest was actually a 2-parter. I spoke to Larry Hankin, and he just had so many stories to tell. We had to do it in 2 days. It was really good. He was a fascinating guy. Had these just incredible stories. But on average, about 40 minutes is probably the mean of all the shows that I've done.
Now, when you talked to Larry, did you discuss him and Clint Eastwood?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
He has a really interesting story about Escape from Alcatraz on there.
Does he?
About being like a method actor and everything like that, and like the way that he was prepping for his part, they were concerned that he was a method actor and Clint don't like method actors. But he's like, I'm not a method actor.
Too funny.
Just real quick, Vin Diesel, he's working on the Arc 2 video game. Apparently, he's part of the company. But back in 1994, he was in the commercial for Street Sharks, the toy.
That's what it was. I knew it was something like that. Yes, Street Sharks, and he was such a doofus in that commercial.
And apparently, he was also in Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Well, that I didn't.
Oh, wow! Look at that. That's too funny.
Yeah.
How about that? Yeah.
But yeah, I knew it was like some 90s thing, and for some reason I was thinking it was like the Game Boy, but
now that brings up an interesting point. Which is a better resume entry, working with a kangaroo or being in Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo?
Kangaroo, because there's very few people that work with kangaroos, and there's a ton of people that were in Breaking 2.
Because Breaking 1 left so many unanswered questions, you know.
Well, I mean, clearly.
Now, Jim, I'm assuming you like working alone. I mean, it's your podcast. You control everything. How did you decide to do it that way instead of getting like a bunch of co-hosts? Leo had to scrounge up me and Patsy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he needed a couple of dorks, so he grabbed us. But you do it alone. What's going on here? Explain it.
I actually had done a side project. I do like little side podcasts, like mini podcasts. And this one was called The Expert Factory. And I was going to have people who did like maybe specific shows or people who were experts in a certain field so they could talk about stuff. We only did like about 6 episodes. And it was so hard having to depend on other people's schedules. I guess because I probably have it in my mind because I'm so anal about things that, this has to be done this way and at this time. So I'm probably not the easiest person to work with either. I wouldn't want to, infringe that on somebody. Even when I did my show with Mr. Bruce, my voiceover guy, we said a day, but I knew in my head what I wanted it to sound like. And he was just kind of along for the ride, I guess.
And I think that it can be difficult because when I first started my show, Throwdown Thursday, it was me and a friend of mine, and then my wife joined us, and then after 100 episodes, my friend was like, "All right, I'm podcasted out. I've done 100 episodes. I'm good." So then it was just my wife and I. Now it's just like, all right, well, that's super easy. Like, we can do this show whenever. But I think it's difficult to try and do a show like there's a buddy of mine, El Goro, does his show Talk Without Rhythm, where it's just him discussing movies. And that can be really difficult to do because I've tried doing that with one of my shows. And if it's just you and you don't have someone else to talk to and bounce things off of, like that's a tough thing to pull off and keep people engaged. So you, at least it's just you and you have your guest on. So that's way easier because you're going back and forth with your guest. Have you ever thought of doing episodes just by yourself where you like, oh, we didn't get a guest this week, so I'm going to be talking about my trip to the mall and how things went?
I actually had a situation like that, Patsy. That's so funny that you mentioned that. The episode is titled Jim the Podcast Sherpa Flies Solo and somehow manages to knock over the food cart. So it's just basically me babbling. At the end of each season, I do like a solo episode where I kind of thank all my guests and talk about what's going on and really do like the Sherpa suggestions for the guests who have been on the show. Just kind of like a nice little tying everything up in a bow. And you when you talk about working with other people, that's interesting when you said you were doing it with your wife. Those were actually my favorite interviews when I get like a team or co-hosts because the show, it creates itself on its own. I don't even have to, feed into anything because they're just bouncing off of each other while they're answering the question. So I just kind of say, okay, I'll just wait till you're done.
It's fun when there's, you have 2 or 3 people. It can be complicated if you have like, all right, we have 6 people on, and it's like, yeesh, how are we going to do this?
So. I mean, Passy, we've had those shows before where you have like, 6, 8 people on, and it can be extremely difficult.
The entire cast of a film at one time.
Oh yeah, totally. And like one of them was like in Europe, and it was like one person kept on disconnecting, and every time they tried to connect, it was like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And it's just absolute nightmare. But going back to sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Sure. No, you can go first. If you want.
Well, no, I was just going to say, going back to like co-hosts and people to work with, a lot of times, it's hard to find that core group of people. I've been doing the Dorkening since 2013, and I've gone through probably like 20 different co-hosts, and it's just, it's tough when, somebody is like, they're along for the ride, and you can tell they're not interested, and they're just sitting there just being quiet, but they're on the show, but it's difficult to find that crew. Like, I think the crew we have now across the network, and you guys, this is like the best we've been. It's just phenomenal people. Just we're all in it because we love it, and just really good chemistry.
Now, Jim, I had a question to follow up what you said. You said seasons. Now, me, Leo, and Patsy, we just keep on going and going and going and going and going. But you're saying there's seasons. What's this all mean? Do you mean you take like a seasonal break like the TV shows?
Pretty much, yeah. That was kind of where I got the idea for it. I didn't know if it was going to be one continuous thing, but I said, you know what? It's probably a good way for reference if I refer to a guest and say, oh, this person was on our first season, and then versus the other 6. Yeah, I do like 25 episodes a season on average, and then a little wrap up at the end of each one. So, and we're heading the end of July will be the end of season 6.
How long of a break do you take?
I don't.
No, okay, because I was gonna say, like, we on Throwdown Thursday we just did 255. This week will be 256, and we pride ourselves on every Thursday for the past 255 weeks, there has been an episode that came out.
Right.
No matter what's going on, we always get an episode out. Like, it might come out at 11:59 on, Thursday night, but it's out there on Thursday. Like, that's all that matters to us. But yeah, like, I've seen a lot of folks do seasons. It's like, all right, we did, 25 episodes. Now we're taking a couple weeks off for our own sanity. Let's do another 25, and we're taking another, like, so you do 25, take a couple weeks, and then another 25. That's your year. You do 50 episodes a year. So, and a lot of people break it up different ways, but
yeah.
How would I even break it up into seasons? I was like, what? Fuck it. Episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Well, just a heads up, Pinecast does the automatic numbering for you. So if you do like Still Token With, they do seasons. So I just let Pinecast do its whole thing. I just say, hey, we're switching to season 2, and it starts numbering all over again.
Very nice. Yeah.
I say ahead of schedule. Right now, I have like my next 8 episodes recorded already and scheduled.
Oh, nice.
So, I'm like 8 weeks younger when these episodes come out. Now I'm 8 weeks older. See, I'm getting grayer already.
That's a smart thing to do. I do that too, because if you're sick or something comes up, you always have something in the can. And so all ready to go. So that's a great idea.
That's always been my plan. I haven't done that yet.
So speaking of the craziest episode that you guys have ever done? What was the craziest episode that you guys have ever done?
Well, Leo was on with me once where we interviewed the cast of a horror movie, and that included, there was like a dozen different people that popped in throughout the night, including Stormy Daniels. So that was an interesting time.
Oh yeah, I remember you guys talking about that. Yeah,
that was a fun one. That was pretty crazy. We've done a couple of live shows where we talked. We did Godzilla one, like our Godzilla versus Kong preview. And there was,
and you saw Mega Godzilla.
Yeah,
Mega Godzilla. Well done, sir. Well done.
And that was like 8 or 9 people that we had on just for that. So we've done a few like crazy ones like that, and then you have the ones where it's like, we're having all kinds of technical difficulties, and we don't know when our guest is going to be back. So let's talk about something fun for the next 10 minutes until they get here, and hope.
Right. Or you go in blind. We choose a movie, and then we say we just heard that someone liked it, heard it was pretty good or whatever. So we all go in blind, and then afterwards it's like, oh, what do we say? And so it's you go, well, and so it's
I liked the shirt you wore in that one scene, and
that's.
Well, what'd you think of my dialogue?
Yeah,
they certainly were words.
Yeah. Back to that shirt.
Now, Jim, that's a good point that you asked us that question because Patsy brought up, and as we're doing right now, even though technically anybody can listen to this later on, this is in theory live. So you record in advance. You don't do live. Is there a reason for that, or did it just happen to go that route, and that's how you've always been?
It's an audio podcast only, so it really. To me, didn't really make a difference, but I just kind of felt if I can plot ahead and then I know like what's going to be my final episode of the season and and know what's coming up. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I guess it's just kind of for my own little quirks.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. Like if you're in control, when you're going to do things, what order, like because you might come up like, okay, I'm going to do. I have 6 interviews coming up, and I'm going to do it in this order, and then like you do them, and you still have plenty of time. It's like, you know what? I didn't like the way this one turned out. I think I should put this one in. This is stronger. I'm going to lead with this one. So you have that ability to kind of, mix and match and switch things around. So even though you planned it to be one way, you can kind of rearrange things based on what you've done. Whereas, we do our stuff and it's just like, this is what we're doing right now, and I hope it's good.
Yeah, what we do now, what we do in our podcast is we actually now date stamp it. So in the podcast, we say, hello, this is us, and it's February 2nd that we're recording this because one of our listeners has noticed that sometimes it doesn't come out the very next day or the very next week. Sometimes it comes out 4 weeks later, and they figured it out. So because of that person, we always date stamp our podcast because of it.
Do you get those criticisms on YouTube like, why isn't this live?
Oh my God! Yeah, no, we fortunately haven't, thank God. But I know a lot of people just won't watch it, listen to anything unless it's live, and while other people won't listen to stuff unless it's they can listen to it on their own time. So I guess it depends on the listener, right?
And that's why it's good to cover all the bases. Like our shows here are live, and then it gets ripped down for the audio version. So it's you cover both bases.
Yeah, that's what I do. If I do a live show, like it's live, you want to jump in, anybody who wants to make comments and do things like that, we have our comment section. But it's also going to come out on Thursday. So if we record Saturday, this is still the episode that's going to come out Thursday. So, because some folks work Saturdays, and they're not able to listen to it at that point.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to have both. If you want we don't do live every week. I mean, on this show, yes, but on Throwdown Thursday, we don't do live every week. But we will occasionally, like we did a live New Year's Eve episode. We did a live something else. We did another live for episode 250, we did a live episode. That was a lot of fun. But other than that, like this going live, you know how long it takes me to do my hair? Like this is, this isn't just, I don't just wake up and look this good. Like this is difficult. I have to work.
Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
Right. And I don't want to make myself look too good because then nobody wants to watch me. And they're all like, oh my God, are you Jason Statham? And I said, no. Like, will you still sign an autograph? Yes. Will you sign it, Jason Statham? No.
I'll misspell it.
Jim. Have you done any on location podcasting, like almost like news reporting, where you went to a big event and you decided to do it like right there? I mean, because since you're not live, you could actually just bring a recorder too, and go to conventions, go to big events at wherever, anything like that.
No, thus far it's pretty much been from the Sherpa Chalet and wherever my guest is. We've never even been in the same room yet, so I haven't even gotten to that point yet.
I see how that could work. Yeah, I mean, we've done some stuff from conventions, like gotten some audio from conventions. We've interviewed folks, and like the whole thing is, we're talking about this convention and different people's, perspectives and experience there. But like my show is, we do character reviews the way some shows do movie reviews, so we always have to kind of tie it back to characters somehow. So it's like, oh, how you doing? My name is Joe, and you having fun here at the convention? Yeah. And we talk about that, and it's like, all right, got to talk about characters. How do we wrangle this back? See, and that's kind of what you were alluding to earlier, how your show doesn't have that set format. You're like, yeah, I can talk about whatever the hell I want, and that's just the way it's going to be. Where with us, it's like people are expecting a specific thing. I have to do this specific thing and tie it in somehow. So how do I do that?
Yeah, and tying back to your guys' earlier question about not having a specific niche, I can go in being a blank slate and just ask whatever I want to ask. I interviewed an astrophysicist a couple of weeks ago. So I got to get all my space questions out of there, and he was great. Just an answer for everything. It was and I felt like smarter when it was done. Just being getting a response in that quick a time. It was just unbelievable. And he has a podcast himself as well.
So my question to you is, I saw that you like to do a lot of bad jokes. So did you maybe ask him something that he kind of hesitated on? And did you say something like, listen, it's not brain surgery, it's rocket science?
Actually, when I start the interview, I said, the only thing I know about space is the space between my ears. It's okay.
It's not a bad joke. I know there's no thing as a bad joke. There is no such thing as a bad joke. There are jokes. All right. Yeah. And here's the thing: if you tell a joke
especially
and someone doesn't respond,
self-humor,
that means you have to try harder. If they respond well, then you're on a roll. So keep going exactly how you're going. Like that's the rule.
Yeah. Well, my bad jokes are actually very intentional. Because, and I'll explain why. Because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I will check people's things out. There are things on Facebook groups, and they'll say, listen to my show and tell me what you think. And I'll give people my honest opinion because, well, you asked. Mm-hmm. And some of these people say, well, this is a comedy podcast, and you're listening, and you're like, where's the comedy part? It's just people attempting to be somebody else. You can tell that. You're not funny. You're just crude. There's a fine line there. So
yeah, I guess
I will never ever call my show a comedy podcast. So there will always be bad jokes by the Sherpa studio players in the beginning. They're all voiceover bots that are just making the worst jokes in the world, and I pat myself on the back for writing them.
I like those bots. Yeah. Sorry, you're going to say, Phil?
No, I was just going to ask him, since he mentioned astrophysicists and all this other stuff. I was curious if you've ever interviewed ex-mobsters. That would be kind of cool. The closest that I've come to somebody who was involved with the mob was Jack O'Halloran, who played Non in Superman.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because his father was supposedly Meyer Lansky.
Oh, yeah.
And he wrote a book about it, actually.
Right.
That was actually the closest, though. As far as I know, if there are other alleged activities from my other guests, they may not have been so forthcoming.
That type of interview, that's something that you have to also be careful about, because you don't want to say something or ask something and be like, I probably shouldn't have gotten that answer because now I know the answer. And hey, son, go start my car for me.
Oh, look at the time.
We're gonna fit you for some cement shoes.
I thought you said he was dead. No, I said he sleeps with the fishes.
Although I've been accused of wanting to put a hit out on certain podcasters, but we won't get into that because my lawyer Dirty Louie isn't around right now.
Have you had feuds with other podcasters?
Nah, I'm pretty good. I mean, there was one time I was talking about one guy, but he was a guest, and I think he's fantastic. But I just kind of merely made it sound like, let's kidnap him because he's too talented. Well, I think if I eliminate the competition, then more people will want to listen to my show.
Oh, there you go.
That's usually the way it works. Yeah. I mean, I don't. It's weird. I don't think I've ever gotten. I don't think I've gotten into a feud with anybody either. At least not a real one.
All right, we gotta create one just to make it look like
we need to
get some
feud.
news. Yeah.
Although Leo was trying last week with Steven and his name changes.
Oh, I haven't heard about this.
Oh, we'll tell you after because I still want to get some questions for Jim. So, Jim, who's a guest? Like, who's your white whale of interviews? Like anybody, doesn't matter who.
Oh wow, that's a tricky one. I guess because I kind of go back and forth with topics and everything. There was one actress that I'd like to talk to because I just find her very interesting. Her name is Carolyn Hennessy. She's done a whole bunch of. She's on a soap opera. She's on General Hospital, but she's done like a lot of other movies and TV shows. And you see her on Twitter, and she's talking about trapezing. So I'm thinking, like, this has got to be an interesting person to talk to.
Yeah. I mean,
but there's some artists and stuff like I've emailed some people and I haven't gotten responses. That happens. Like whoever's going to show up is going to show up. So every once in a while, you'll luck out. That's the way you have to look at it. I mean, judging by the opening credits that I see for this show, I was like, wow, look at the people who you guys have spoken to.
It's usually at cons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Carolyn Hennessy, why haven't you been able to get her? What's going on here? Did you email her?
I don't know. It's funny because you work with Jill Whelan, and I said, hey, drop a line to my friend Carolyn Hennessy to tell her I would gladly have her on my podcast. So we'll see what happens. Hey, maybe he's watching this, and she'll be like, I got to get in touch with that guy.
You never know. Like, every now and then, like, it's like they say in hockey, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you just, I've emailed a bunch of people through their representatives and whatnot, and it's crazy. Like one of my white whales, one of the guys that I would love to get on the show more than anything is Nick Cage. I'm sorry, Academy Award winner Nick Cage. And I actually heard back from his representation. Like most times you don't even hear back from them. They were just like, yeah, Nick's not interested in doing anything like that right now, but thanks for reaching out. And it's like, you know what? That's not bad. They actually responded. Like, that's kind of cool. Other people are just like, you never hear anything.
Yep.
There was one 80s artist that I had emailed, and the representative just wrote back, he would not be interested. That was the whole email. Not even thank you for asking. And the guy I found out lives in Berlin. I was like, why didn't they just send me back an email that just said 9?
You want to be on 9 shows? All right. This is awesome. We'll do a whole series.
That's awesome.
It'll be like that scene in Silent Movie with Marcel Marceau, where he answers the phone and he's like, oh, do you want to do this? And he's like, no. What'd he say? I don't know. I don't speak French.
A lady that I interviewed, her name is Lana Reed. She's a director. And she had posted a picture of her dog on social media, and she got a comment from the actor Vincent D'Onofrio.
Mm-hmm.
It said, oh, nice dog and everything like that. So she said, well, look. She said, I'm not friends with him on Twitter. He said he just reached out and made a comment. So she said, I just went out and asked him and said, let me take my shot. Would you like to be on my podcast? And he said, yeah. And she said it was like an actor's master class interviewing him. And she said, I asked him when we were done, how come you don't go on many podcasts? And he said, not a lot of people ask me. It was just that simple.
Note to self.
Vincent D'Onofrio, yeah.
Shoot a message to Vinny D'Onofrio.
Hey,
Vinny!
He's going to be in Marvel soon, so it's like official Marvel. So
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if you ask somebody every now and then, like, we ended up winning an award for an interview, and we're not an interview show. Because I reached out to I love sharks. I love all the bad shark movies. Mm-hmm. And Asylum was putting out their mockbuster to the Megalodon. And I'm a huge fan of the Meg and Steve Alton and all that stuff. And so I reached out, one of the, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see this. And one of the actors reached out to me and was like, oh, thanks for saying that. I really hope you enjoy it. I'm like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? And he's like, yeah. And then he came on the podcast and he's like, hey, do you mind if I get like the entire rest of the cast on with me? And like, since then, he's been in the Harley Quinn movie. He was on The Mandalorian. So like you're saying, like, you never know where some of these folks are going to be. The guy's name is Dominic Pace. He's an absolutely awesome human being. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, just like reach out to people and you never know where they're going to be. And they remember the people who help support them.
Yeah, sure.
Totally.
They all got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Dominic Pace, it probably takes him a long time to do his hair too.
Yes. He and I have the same barber. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Jim, running your podcast, what would you say is some of the hardest aspects of it?
Hardest aspects.
Yeah. Is it editing? Is it scheduling? Is it communication? And what are some tips you would give to the would-be podcaster that wants to be one of the too many podcasts out there?
You know what? Can I do your second question first? Because
Go
maybe
for
that
it,
might
yeah.
answer the first question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they say, oh, I'm going to do this, and they start off, they instantly get those delusions of grandeur. Like, well, I'm going to put this podcast out and 1 million people are going to listen to me and I'm going to rake in all this money. And no, it doesn't work like that for anybody, not even the biggest podcasters around.
No,
they're not really making money off of their podcasts either. It's usually just the merchandise and, maybe other things that they're doing. This is just adding to their notoriety at best. Don't come on here and try and be somebody else because, like I was talking about people who say that they're comics or, or think that they're funny because they're trying to imitate, Joe Rogan or anybody else. So they want to talk like Gary Vee or, it doesn't work. You got to be sincere. You have to be consistent. No one's going to listen to your show one time and then you decide to do a show 6 months later and you're going to wonder, well, where's my audience? Well, they gave up on you about 5 months ago.
Yeah, that's the one thing I tell people too.
Yeah. You got to be consistent. Don't keep changing course because people may relate to you on the one thing that you're doing great. I mean, you guys have you've carved out your niche from what I can tell, and you're all very solid with it and you gel well together. But are any of you guys planning on doing like cooking shows right now or anything like that?
I mean, Phil could.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to.
Hey.
Shows. Cooking's the best.
Bring it over on the Dorkening Podcast Network, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I
foods do the superheroes eat?
Like shawarma, apparently. I do the sports show. I do Throwdown Thursday. I do this show. I occasionally appear on the Wednesday show, and then I have my other show that's just kind of like a filler show that it's like it doesn't fit in anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Mel Brooks movies. Let's interview a writer. Let's talk about this new movie that's coming out. I did an episode on COVID-19 a year and 2 months ago.
Well, so you're doing how many shows, Patrick?
Well, right now it's just counting this one, just 3 a week because doing 6 a week was too many podcasts.
Yeah.
Especially this one. I like this one because I don't have to produce or edit it. And when I started, and Jim, tell me if this sounds familiar to you at all. When I started, I would go through, I'd edit out every pause. I'd edit out the ums and the ahs. Then I was like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. If it sounds awful, we just did our episode last week. We had a friend who is a very big supportive a podcast supporter. He passed away. And so we dedicated the show to him. And at the beginning, I kept screwing up the intro that I've done 180 times. And Well, I was like, hey, you've screwed up a bunch of times. Do you want to start over? And I said, absolutely not, because I'm overcome with emotion and I'm very sad. And I want that to, I want people to realize, just how important this person was to us. So if I go back and edit it, that seems disingenuous. If you're hearing me screw up and I'm screwing up and you hear the emotion in my voice, I think that's fine.
Sure.
Also, I don't have 4 hours a night to edit a podcast.
Yeah. You have to have the genuineness in there, and that's why, like, I don't write scripts anymore, because
no script.
You got to just kind of keep a conversation going. Like, I was telling my guests, like, some of them get nervous with me. Why? I have no idea. But I say it's just a conversation. It's not an interrogation. We're not going to shine a light on you and say, "Where were you yesterday?"
We came up with a way on our show to kind of combat that, because we've had a couple of people, not like people we know, like friends of ours, like, hey, you know a lot about Game of Thrones, why don't you come on and talk about Game of Thrones with us? Mm-hmm. And this person was super nervous, but we do a segment called Getting Into Character, where we ask you.
Actually, sorry, real quick. Phil needs to drop, so we're going to let him drop.
Okay.
So real quick, Phil, where do you like people interacting with you?
Sure. People can interact with me on Facebook, but the website is www.darkdiscussions.com, which is an all-news website about film. Also has over 30 podcasts, and we just hit our 10th year anniversary, so that's where they can find me, Leo.
Awesome. And how many podcasts are you doing? That was what we were talking about earlier.
Right now, 4, but 2 of them are I guess monthly. Yeah, so only 2 weekly at this time. Yeah.
You guys are making too many podcasts.
So,
you're keeping me busy.
Dude. Well, I'll talk to you guys later. Nice meeting you, James. And,
nice meeting you, Phil.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Okay,
Take care,
talk to you later, my friends. Yep, bye.
And,
and I was gonna say, I do this thing called Getting Into Character, where you ask random questions like, do you consider the hot dog a sandwich? Like, what's your favorite type of lightsaber? Like, what's your favorite, sci-fi spaceship? And it sounds like you do a similar thing where you ask, some different questions to kind of put people at ease, where it's not like I'm going to ask you like the same question. Like, you're an astrophysicist. All right, why isn't Pluto a planet? Interrogative type things, where it's just like, no, it's, let's ask some random stuff that has nothing to do with why you're on the show today, put you at ease, calm you down, and then we take a break, and then we come back, and it's like, all right, I'm relaxed, I'm in the flow of things, and like, it sounds like you do something very similar.
With a few guests, I've done a section actually called Totally Random Questions, and like, I asked Scotty Morris, how many hats do you own? And it was about 100, believe it or not.
Well,
that's a
good
question. One of his music videos, because he was just like changing hats, and I said, "How many hats do you own?" I said, "You got a good head for hats." He's like, "Thank you."
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question, because it's not personal. It's not something that you're like, I don't really want to talk about that. It's not, something that you have to think hard about. It's like, wait a minute. How many hats do I have? But it's fun. It's something that it probably doesn't get asked very often. Like, these are great questions. Like, I love that. And, even if they, maybe it's like, I'm a little stiff at the beginning. It's like, how many hats do I have? Oh man, let me think. Like, that's great. And it loosens people up. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you. I also asked Sean Kanan if he had a good recipe for spaghetti sauce. And he does.
Oh man. Yeah, this has been good. I like how you conduct your interviews. I like the fact that, you have such a wide swath that you're cutting through all these different professions and specialties for folks, because you never know who's going to be listening. You never know, what episode is going to be somebody's first episode. You never know. When I first started doing this, I think I was on like my second or third podcast, and I was a guest with a bunch of other people, including a film producer and these guys that have put out hundreds and hundreds of episodes, and I'm like, I am so far out of my realm that, you know, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And it was my buddy El Goro again who says, there's a million people that do what we do, but nobody else has your voice. And that is something that I've brought up dozens of times, no matter what somebody's like, oh, I want to write, but, you know, I don't think my ideas are any good. And it's like, just write the story. Even if it's not good, it doesn't matter. You know, like I used to think my stories were stupid. And then I read The Mangler by Stephen King about a haunted laundry machine that kills people that they made into a movie. And then they made a sequel. Like, there are no bad ideas. There are no bad ideas. But if you tell the story well, that's what counts. And that's the same thing with podcasts. Like,
absolutely,
I want to do a true crime podcast. Is anybody doing that? Has anybody thought of that yet? You know, like, I want to review horror movies. I don't think anyone's done that. Like, there's a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of this stuff that's been happening. That's that, you know, people are like, oh, I like this. It's like, if you like it and you're passionate about it, fucking do it.
Oh, yeah. There is a podcast, and I'm not making this up, guys. It's called The Empty Bowl. Did you ever hear of it?
No.
The guy, they play meditative music while the guy talks about cereal. That's the podcast.
Okay.
If it's something you're passionate about and you can talk about and make it interesting, go for
if
it.
the guy could launch more than 10 episodes and then, you know, still have a following and that people are talking about it, right?
Yeah. Who doesn't love cereal? I love cereal. Like,
sit to meditative music. Cheerios.
Well, isn't there that whole genre of
ASMR?
Yeah, yeah.
That, I think that's a little newer. But yeah, like, if you can look at a show and it's like, you know, what do you do? Like, how do you, you know, we were at a con, it was Scaricon actually, Leo, where I met Leo and Phil for the first time. And my wife and I are at our table and this random guy comes over. It's like, oh, you do a podcast? Oh, what's it about? You know, tell me about it a little bit. And, you know, I'm telling him about it. I'm like, here's a card. Here's some stickers. If you want to come on the show, we'd love to have you. You know, my wife didn't recognize Don Coscarelli, but I did. But he took a card and, you know, we never heard from him again. But that's okay. The fact is that he stopped and he took the time to listen to us and talk to us. And I wish I was able to be like, we won best interview. Here's our award. But it was the day before, so we unfortunately did not have it. But, you know, it's again, if you know what you're good at and you know what you enjoy, you know what you want to do, it doesn't matter that other people do it. Like, you know, nobody's like, oh man, I like playing quarterback, but there's already quarterbacks in the NFL. Man, I enjoy playing basketball, but there's already a bunch of professional basketball players. So I'm not going to take that shot. Like, nobody does that. You know,
and
no
you
one's
mentioned
gonna play like you.
You mentioned horror podcasts. I mean, we have what, a dozen on the network,
at least,
and they're all, yeah.
Yeah, and they're unique because they're going to be hosted by different people. So you're going to have different takes on different films. You're going to have different formats. You're going to have different voices. Everyone's going to sound different. You're going to have different personalities. Like, it's never going to be the same. Like, that's what folks need to take into consideration. But the big thing, like you were saying, Jim, consistency. You know, like, we'll put out a show every Tuesday. Well, we missed last Tuesday. We'll put it out 2 weeks from now on Saturday, and then a month from now on Monday. Like, why isn't anyone listening to our show? Well, because nobody knows when the hell it's coming out.
That's right.
You know, it's like, we did this for 5 episodes. I'm bored with it. I don't want to do this anymore. And now you don't have a show anymore. And, you know, you're kind of disappointing your audience. I mean, you'll never know because you've quit after 5 shows. Like, and that's the other thing. Like, are you going to get past a dozen episodes? Most shows don't.
Right.
Well, that's why, you know, you need to have something you're passionate about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's that's why I started the comic book show. I wanted to get back into reading comics, and this show here, I love talking to Patsy and Phil every week. It's passion. We got passion, Patsy. We got passion.
We do. And, I wanted just to touch on the comic book show and the Wednesday show. Like, the Wednesday show is great. And I love the fact that you've added Powerful Brandon onto the squad.
He's amazing.
That dude knows a lot about comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pop culture.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's, and Justin,
Coop's great.
Yeah. So it's, we definitely have a really cool and awesome group right now.
Very, very, very eclectic group of people with a lot of varied fandoms. Yep. And that's just like your show, Jim. Like you have, like you're saying, you have astrophysicists and actors and musicians and wrestlers and, competitive pole dancers. And now, see, that I would have liked to see a live show so they could show you some moves and you could get up there and do that. My wife did that for part of her bachelorette party, and she said it's one of the most grueling exercises that she's ever done.
On my show notes, there's a link to her Instagram page where she's doing a routine.
Yeah, but she's a pro. I want to see you get up there and try it.
I don't think anybody wants to see that, Patsy.
It's like, oh, all right. We're interviewing, there was a guy that did sports science, and they were like, okay, what's it like to block a penalty kick in soccer? And so they're like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And like the guy lined up to block a penalty kick from a professional soccer player. Ball caught him in the ear at like 60 miles an hour.
Ouch.
He's like, yep. So that's what it's like. All right. Well, I'll never do that again. Like what's it like to take a punch from an MMA fighter, or, oh, this guy does Muay Thai, and we were going to have him, kick me even with all my pads on, but like, here's a clip of him kicking through baseball bats with his shin.
Oh,
it's like, maybe not. Like, I don't want to die.
I know we are running a little late, but I also wanted to dork out a little bit. What's your talking about equipment, podcasting equipment?
Okay.
What are you using? What do you recommend?
Tell us about your equipment, Jim. This show got blue real quick.
It was funny. I was watching a YouTube the other day about talking about setting up your podcast, and they were talking about all the introductory stuff you should be using, and I was like, I use that. I use that. I use that. I was checking all the boxes.
Oh, nice.
You can start really simple. When I first started, I was using an app called Anchor, and you could actually download it on your phone and you're talking to your phone if you want to start simple. After a while, I realized, you know what? I have a computer. I have GarageBand, and I know people talk about Audacity for mixing. So I learned how to use that, and it's free. Well, GarageBand came with the computer, and I sprung for a Mac. The only thing that I've really spent a lot of money on was this mixing software called Bouncecast, which cleans up a lot of the sound and stuff like that.
I'm not familiar with that one.
But I edit, when I edit my shows, I basically load it into Bouncecast, clean it up, put it into Audacity, take out all the uhs and ums. I know, because I'm a pain in the neck like that. And then once that's all done, I'll put it through GarageBand and equalize it just so it has that sound that I want. So, and at first, I really wasn't like that. I was just like, okay, I recorded it. And then after a while, I realized, if you want people to come back, you got to sound good. They don't want to hear somebody who sounds like he's in the bathroom.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah. See, I was fortunate enough. I got a mixer, and then Leo gave me the better version of that mixer. And I've gone through several computers. I have a new computer now. I use Audacity. I've used Audacity because it was free, and I was able to get it on my computer. And I taught myself how to do everything, because we used to have a producer. We used to have a studio that we went to. And then our producer was like, hey, I got this job in Maryland, so I'm moving. So it's like, oh, okay, so I guess I need to learn how to do all this stuff myself now because I want to continue doing my show. So, and I was one of those, like, I'm going to take out the pauses, I'm going to take out the ums and ahs, then realized it was taking me 2.5, 3 hours, but I was at the point where it's like, oh, you see that sound? Know what that is? That's me going, so I can cut that out without listening to it and making sure that I'm not saying something. Then I was just like, no, I don't care anymore. This is who we are when we're doing live shows. This is how we sound. So I want it to be genuine. This is what we're doing. So yeah, I use Audacity. I have a great mixer. My mic is set up so I have to be right on top of it like this. So if I want a fan right next to me blowing on me, you're not going to hear my fan, which is just the best. So I mean, there's probably some things there's definitely some things I could do to improve, but it's like, this is what I'm proficient at, and this is how I want my show to sound. So I'm going to keep doing it the way I'm doing it. What you're doing works for you.
Right.
What I'm doing works for me. What Leo does works for him. Like, we all have our different equipment and things like that. Like, I had one of those like scissor arms that was like clamped to the table. I didn't like it. I like my nice long extendo arm instead. Like, I prefer that, and it takes some time. Like, I don't know what you use for a mic or headphones and whatnot.
Simple little thing.
Yeah. I got a Shure mic, in my little, like I said, my stand here. And, because I knew how I like to sit. I know where I like to sit. I know how much space I have. So I know where I can place my mic. I used to put a pop filter on, but then we did video. It would cover my face. So it would be like this. And I was like, all right, no pop filter. It sounds a little better, but it's trial and error. And it's, again, if you go back 100 episodes, we sound so different than we do now. Like, as you go along, you're getting better. You're learning how to steer conversations a specific way. You know how to deal with, like, oh, that was a really awkward thing we just said, or a really awkward, interaction we just had. So let's move on to the next segment. And that's stuff that you learn as you go along. You've got, you said like around 170 episodes. I'm sure episode 14 is not as good as episode 60, is not as good as episode 93, is not as good as episode 150, and is not as good as episode 175. Like, every episode you're going to get better.
Yeah. And you guys probably know your touchstones too. Like, this was the point where all of a sudden the sound got nicer. This was the point where, like, the style of the interview got a little sharper, and we realized that certain things weren't working, and then we could go in a new direction. You guys know that yourself. That was like the same thing with me. Like, I know there were certain shows where, like, oh yeah, I think I fixed this at this point. You can almost hear it in my voice sometimes. Like, oh yes, this is working.
And you can't be afraid to change.
Right.
Podcasting is a constant evolution. Not only equipment. And, like a lot of our stuff, a lot of my stuff is all, fixing issues, like I started with like a cheap little USB mic, and then, you have issues along the way, and you're constantly, upgrading to fix current issues. Same thing with podcasting, is like you said, you realize something isn't working, change it. It has to fit your voice. And you just, it doesn't hurt to mold your podcast as you go along.
Right.
Yeah, Leo has found that ask every guest about their equipment, and let the guest take it as they will. So, how's your equipment?
Yeah, we'll have to add that to the list. But yeah, I like at least dork out once with everybody. Even with the still token guys. Where it's we could have somebody talking about growing cannabis, and it's just like, okay, you're growing cannabis, but like, what do you dork out about, to grow it? What's the intricacies, or do you play video games?
Chances are those things probably go fairly close hand in hand. I used to work at Target, and Target was running like some promotion, and they're like, "Oh, if you buy this video game, you get like free Doritos or whatever." I'm like, there should be a like, why is the video games over here and the Doritos are 25 aisles across the store? Why don't we have like a temporary display with Doritos and Mountain Dew right next to the video game? Like, why is that not next to electronics? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, oh, that's a good idea. Corporate will never go for it. I'm like, well, maybe you get corporate to go for it because, that shit just sells itself.
Oh, yeah. Just real quick, and I know I brought up cannabis, but just a real funny story about electronics and cannabis. I used to work at a software etc. a long time ago, and we used to get these huge shipments in for Christmas, and I had these two
cannabis or electronics,
both.
Okay, that was our Christmas bonus.
Oh yeah. No, it was software etc. I used to work at. It was a computer store, and Christmas time we get these huge shipments in. So I had, a couple guys working that, late at night to unpack everything. So I go in late, it's around midnight to check on them. And as soon as I come up to the gate, they're playing football with, it was like Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario toys. And as soon as I walk in, one's flying across the ceiling, hits the, what the hell is it? The fire nozzle.
Mm-hmm. The sprinkler system
tags it hard, and we're all sitting there watching it as it like wobbles apart, just like thinking, okay, the store is going to be soaked any second now. Luckily it wasn't, but it was hilarious. Oh, and they were high as a kite. That's where I was going at. They're high.
Yeah, I got. I thought you were gonna be like, I walked in and I got a contact high.
Well, that could have happened too, but yeah, they were high as a kite playing football with like Sonic and Mario toys. It was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens.
How did you lose your job? Well, Sonic hit the fire extinguisher. And... Oh, okay.
You should have seen it, man. It was this Italian guy. He sabotaged the sprinkler system, and they blame me for some reason. I don't know.
All I heard was do. You're fired.
Yeah. And then like the game over sound. Yeah, it was this Italian plumber, man. He screwed me, like just wrecked the sprinkler system. It's not my fault. I found a hedgehog in it. I mean, technically all of that is true.
Well, that was fun. Patsy, did you have any other questions? Or Jim, was there anything else, any questions you had for us, or just no?
What are there anything that's coming up for your show that you want to hype?
We're doing actually I haven't built the event for it yet, but this Saturday with one of the guys we work with, RW Martin, we're doing an electric company reunion special. And we have a bunch of people from the electric company. The old.
We're gonna turn it on. We're gonna bring in the power. Exactly. Why do I know that theme? Morgan Freeman and Rita Moreno.
I know. Rita. I think Rita's coming on. Morgan, we reached out to. And his people were like, we'll present it to him. But yeah, we didn't hear back from them. But yeah, we got a bunch of people coming on Saturday. It's, Ben, we're working with Steve as well and having a lot of fun with him. And, he's a great guy. And, he's definitely helping us out with a lot of guests as well.
We've been having a lot of fun with some of these guests. Like when we did a Grease episode a few weeks ago, and I had never seen the movie, and so I watched it the night before. We interviewed a bunch of the folks from Grease, and everyone was just like astonished. People were looking at me like, I was like, yeah, I've never seen the movie before. And I might as well have said, yeah, so I like to vivisect puppies in front of toddlers as a hobby, and then eat the puppies when I'm done, always raw. People were like, oh my God, you've never, what? It's like, I can name a bunch of movies you've probably never seen, okay?
Oh, believe me, I have a huge list.
You know, it's like, just don't movie shame me. I was never interested in it. I'm like, I know about it. Like, I know that at the end of the movie, John Travolta flies away with Olivia Newton-John, and they fly away in a convertible. And I was like, all right, that's all I need to know. They just fly away in a convertible and never come back down, and they don't even address it in the sequel. So, sure, that may as well happen.
Next.
And people give me shit for liking Jaws the Revenge.
What about you, Patsy? You got any big things coming up for Throwdown Thursday? Or
I mean, we always have big stuff. You know, we are working on trying to get some folks on. We're going to be doing another big event for some of the movies coming out. I got to do some more live trailer reactions because I really feel like I should, because I did one for Godzilla versus Kong, and that was a lot of fun, and people seem to enjoy it. I'm like, all right, I got to do more of these because this is fun. But I haven't been looking forward to anything as much as I've been looking forward to Godzilla versus Kong. So,
well, supposedly we may be getting a Spider-Man trailer soon, and then obviously there's going to be a Masters of the Universe trailer soon.
I do like Masters of the Universe.
You going to join us Wednesday?
I'm going to try. Let's see what we do for recording for.
Okay. Well, you know, you're always welcome to join us Wednesday whenever you want.
I mean, I gotta get back on. I haven't been on that show in several months.
Yeah. Too many podcasts, right, Jim?
Too many podcasts.
I was doing one every day. Like, I would have this show that came out on Monday, Shark Bites that would come out on Tuesday. I would do the Wednesday show. Throwdown Thursday would come out on Thursday, and then the sports show would come out on Friday. So I had a show 5 days a week.
Wow.
And it was a lot.
Yeah.
So
Saturday, you probably didn't want to talk to anybody. Like,
no, and that's another reason why I stopped editing. It's like, I have 3 shows to edit. Not anymore. Let them go.
Oh, I was going to ask, Jim,
Yes.
do you still have an interest in doing like a radio type show, doing like music and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, people could listen to the shows on Spotify if they want to hear that. If we got enough listeners, we really didn't get a lot of listeners to it, unfortunately. But if it picked up, I would definitely be interested in going back to that.
Well, if you're ever thinking about doing that, you know, I partnered with Hellfire Radio, and
Okay.
And we have one radio show on there now. A lot of the podcasts play on there, but we're going to be reaching out looking for people to do radio type shows as well. And since it's a radio station, you know, all the licensing fees is taken care of, so you can play whatever you want, you know. So it's cool stuff like that. But yeah, you know, just reach out. And I know we're well past the time, so we'll start wrapping things up. So, Jim, where do you like fans interacting with you?
You just need to know one word: Sherpalution. SherpaLution. That's the website, sherpalution.com, and you can hear all the shows and get the news on upcoming stuff. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, also just Sherpalution. Podcast apps, I'm all over the place on any of the big ones, a lot of the small ones. You can even go on Amazon and find me. If you type in Too Many Podcasts, you can see the show right there. It's like you're shopping for socks and you find a podcast.
And I have all that information in the show notes. You know, you could also, you know, grab a domain like Sherpa Lotion and like do a whole thing on that.
You always have to make sure your Sherpas are soft and clean. Yeah, this is Zombie. She has been yelling at me for the last 10 minutes because I'm not paying enough attention to her. But yeah, she sits. Yeah, she was just whining. See, there she is.
Oh,
now she's trying to get away. All right, you wanted attention. I gave you attention, and now you're walking away. That's typical feline. So you can find me every Thursday, like I said, on Throwdown Thursday podcast. You can find me on the Facebook group as well. You can find me. I'm going to be putting up a couple more articles. I have one that I've been working on. Leo, you might like this one. I take the Infinity Gauntlet and I take all the stones out and I give them to Force users.
Oh.
So various Force users get to power their lightsabers with Infinity Stones.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can find me every Friday. I know I was sick for a month or so, so some of the shows kind of got shuffled around a little bit, but every Friday on the Loudest Sports Show. You can find me over on the Major Sports Drops Facebook group, and that's where we raffle off all kinds of awesome memorabilia, similar to the stuff that you see behind me. A lot of this is stuff that I won before I became a moderator of that group, and I am also going to be hosting the first annual Amalgamania Podcast and Entertainment Awards. So you can go on over to amalga-mania.com. You have plenty of time to get your entry in. We have a bunch of different categories, and the winners are all going to receive trophies. We're going to be doing a live awards show hosted by Ashes Von Nightmare and myself. So, Jim, if you're interested, I would head on over to amalga-mania.com because we have a lot of different categories, including Best Interview, that we are looking for submissions. And we have a very nice trophy that we customized, and I've been able to see the prototype, and it's something fantastic. So just something to think about. Amalga-mania.com, and that'll give you all the stipulations, all the different categories. Yeah, we've got a good group of folks. Some of the Dorkening folks have thrown in on there.
Nice.
But we're always looking.
I need to submit some of our shows as well.
Yes, you do.
Is there a category for best bad joke?
There should be. I mean, maybe that's like an honorary category, or maybe we do that next year. This is our first year, so we got like 5 or 6 categories. We're trying to start off slow, plus we're funding it all ourselves. So, I don't know about you, but I know Leo's a fancy millionaire. Like you can't tell, but that room is so big that AT is actually life size. That's a 1-to-1 scale model. It's just really far away.
Yeah. And I had to put special sound dampeners to eliminate the echoing, and
yes,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like Leo is just nuts. But yeah, I definitely recommend anybody who has a podcast, a Twitch stream, a YouTube channel, check it out because we have categories for all those folks. The Toking Dead guys submitted. Steven at Super Retro submitted. So yeah,
some awesome stuff. And you can find all the information in the show notes. For me, just Google Leo Pine. You find a bunch of stuff. Could be true, could be not. I am not a millionaire because
billionaire now. You spent all your money. You invested in Dogecoin, and now
I know. Oh my God, yeah. I should have sold when it was like 74 cents.
It'll get back there.
I know. But I should have sold, and then I sold it at like 52, and then rebought at like 48. Yeah. It was a mess. But
I haven't sold.
Yeah, I rebought. So just trying to inch my way, getting a little more. But I spend all my money on the network. So yeah, I'm poor. So but you can find all the information in the show notes. Follow these awesome people, a lot of awesome stuff. And I run a little thing called the Dorkening Podcast Network, which takes all my money. And you can find over 30 shows on the network, a lot of awesome people. And with that, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Thanks so much.